And for 2 decades, our next guest, Alex Wood, lived a life of lies, posing as a duke, duping businesses and stealing hundreds of thousands of pounds in elaborate frauds. But one day in court changed everything.
Yes, when Alex finally came face to face with the devastating impact of his actions, he turned his back on crime and he now uses his insider knowledge to work with the police to stop the very scams he once carried out. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning.
Good morning, nice to see you. It's so fun. It sounds like the plot of a film. Almost, your life. It's got ups and downs. Can we start at the very beginning? Sure. How did you even first get involved in trying to con people?
Yeah, I mean, I had no, like as a child, no exposure to crime. I didn't grow up in a, I grew up in a nice home and went to a good school. I was very gifted at the violin, and I went to a specialist music school and the Royal Academy of Music as you know, I was quite young. Played all over the world, did a lot of sort of film sessions and so on. So I had every great opportunity to avoid a life of crime. But I developed repetitive strain injury in my wrist in my sort of early 20s, which led to me being able to, completely unable to play the violin anymore. Now, obviously, most people listening to this will think, OK, well, you don't then go into crime. But my first offence was born out of a sort of financial desperation. So all my, earnings completely stopped.
Yes.
I should have, at that point, said, OK, I'll retrain or I'll go into teaching music, for example. But my brain wasn't thinking along those lines. And
why do you think that was, Alex? Because, as you said, you had a really great upbringing. You'd gone to a great school. You'd been at the Royal Academy. This extraordinary gift.
Yes.
And yet your first choice wasn't one of the things that felt like it would be. Your first choice was to do something illegal.
Yeah, exactly. So I look back now at the person I was then and recognise sort of criminal elements in my personality. So a lot of traits of antisocial personality disorder, what we call in the USA the psychopathy spectrum. So I had very little remorse. I had no real inhibition. I had no, I behaved in a sort of grandiose way and superficially charming and so on. And all of these are traits of the sort of classic psychopath. So I mean, you think of a psychopath as being a sort of mass murderer, but actually, I in those circumstances committed my first crime, which was a very, very crude and very. It took the City of London Police, I think, about 30 minutes to unravel what I'd done. But went to prison because of that. That was a sort of crude investment fraud. Against friends of family and friends of friends, and I went to prison for that and then fell into a sort of downward spiral of
And was it, friends of friends? You got friends of yours to get their friends to invest in fake share schemes?
Yeah.
And as you said, you never really felt much remorse because these were the psychopathic tendencies that you had. Did any of those that you had friends? Did any of those friends sort of? What was their reaction to what you'd done?
So I kind of pushed myself away from my friendship circle. All of my friends were in the music trade, and so when I got to the point through my injury where I couldn't play anymore, I became known as unreliable because I was cancelling at the last minute and so on. And I sort of put a lot of pressure on the friendships that I did have because these people were still playing. So I became, not a loner, but I became very sort of insular at this time and sort of pushed away from my family and my sort of support structure, I guess.
So after you'd been to prison for the first time, you came out and you performed another crime as well.
Yes,
What was the second crime? And then did you go back to prison again?
Yeah, so the second crime was the fake duke offence, which, it sounds absurd, and of all the crimes I've done, it's the one which certainly in the media seems more comic. The victims were these 5-star hotels, and I was pretending to be a duke and never swiping a card to stay, and they were sending all the invoices for the stay back to Blenheim Palace. And you couldn't make it up.
And this went on for how long?
7 months.
7 months you were able to blag this?
Yeah, in central London.
Wow.
And how much money do you think you racked up in...
It was a six-figure
bill.
Six-figure sum.
Just kept getting away with it. Were you ever worried about the fact you were going to get caught?
So I thought that if I did, I'd go back to prison. I knew what prison was like. It's not much of a deterrent as a fraudster. So you tend to get quite low sentences. You serve half of that, normally in open conditions. So white-collar offend. And this is one of the problems with my reoffending is that I was banged up, as it were, with other low-risk white-collar offenders.
Yes.
So I met a sort of array of of very expert fraudsters. And when I was in for the fake Duke offences, they were sort of laughing at me and saying, well, you know, you're clearly amazing at committing fraud. You've convinced all these people you're a member of the aristocracy. But what are you getting out of it? You're coming out to nothing. You're not coming out to millions of pounds like we are. Maybe we should do something when we all get released.
So you plotted to do more crimes as soon as you came out?
So forming conspiracies whilst in custody, yeah.
And so then you come out again, and the next time it's a fraud of much more significance.
Yeah, it was devastating. Authorised push payment fraud, so it's known as APP fraud.
Yeah.
So it's where I was calling up businesses and pretending to be from their bank and convincing them to make payments to accounts that I controlled. And in some cases, these were for seven-figure sums.
Over £1 million?
Yeah.
And so for a very long time, you had this opinion that, you know, you weren't really hurting anybody.
Yeah.
You weren't really, you know, it's not like you were leaving someone bleeding in the street.
Yes,
It wasn't anything like that.
Yeah.
So what was the turning point for you where you suddenly turn around and realise, actually, this devastates people's lives?
Yeah. So fraudsters always, and it's always fraudsters that say this, they say fraud's a victimless crime because you don't stay in touch with the victim and see what happens. You know, in the case of APP fraud, I'd make a 30-minute, 40-minute phone call, steal all that money, and then that's it. And I'm
and
like
it's
a
like
ghost.
nameless faces.
Yeah, exactly. So it's only when a perpetrator gets apprehended or goes through the criminal justice system that you start to hear from the victims. And in my case, I was in court to be sentenced for this devastating crime wave. And a victim impact statement was read out where the one particular victim described the huge impact that this had on his health, on his business. He'd had to sack dozens of staff. He didn't trust people anymore. He put strain on his relationships. When the phone rang, he'd panic because he didn't know who it was, and he'd be worried he was going to get defrauded again. And to hear that was shocking for me. I didn't think I was put on the world to cause people these levels of harm. And it was my realisation that actually, you know, the victim here isn't the bank, which refunded the company after months, you know, of arguing. And during that time, he didn't have the working capital. In fact, it has a very, very profound damage and level of harm.
And that moment shifted your perspective on all these things. You decided you needed to do something completely different. You couldn't carry on with this.
No.
And you now work with police and with companies to make sure they are protected and to keep an eye out for these fraudsters. You've got some tips for our viewers as well, because these scams are becoming more and more sophisticated, proliferating everywhere, targeting very vulnerable people. What are your tips from being on the other side, Alex, that we should be all really taking real?
So I'm going to give you three and a half. So the first one is if you're ever requested to make an unexpected payment. So it could be somebody on the phone that says they're from the bank, says they're from the police. Could be someone you think you know is making a demand for a payment you weren't intending to make. Then breathe, step back and take a moment to just look at it properly. Don't be steamrolled into making a mistake. Never share a one-time passcode with anybody. Yeah. Okay. And the third piece of sorry, I've written it all down on my hand.
In
case I got nervous. No, and this is really important. Is 159. So if your bank, or if you have a phone call and you think it's your bank and you're not sure, there's a service which was launched last year called 159. So you dial 159 from any phone, and you'll be connected with a switchboard, and you say which bank you're with, and they'll put you through to the fraud team at your bank straight away. So, you know, if you have somebody that says they're calling from your bank, hang up, and the bank won't mind if you hang up. You know, they want you to make sure you're protected. They won't get cross. And call 159, and you'll be put through to the fraud team. And if it is an issue, they can deal with it then.
And you'll be able to speak to somebody who will say, no, that was us, or absolutely, that was fraudulent.
Yeah, exactly.
And ignore those.
And I think 95% of calls to 159 turn out to be that somebody's been duped.
I think that's the massive takeaway point, is just pause.
Yeah.
Take a second, just collect your thoughts and go, is it real? Because that's always what it seems to be, is people try and hurry you into decisions.
Yeah, fraudsters rely on the element of surprise and people being rushed into making a mistake. I think the other, so the last point is to report. There's a huge problem with under-reporting of fraud.
People are embarrassed.
People are embarrassed, or it might be really small. You know, if somebody loses £20 and it's refunded straight away by the bank, they're not going to phone the police because you haven't got time.
No.
But it's very valuable because it helps the police to build up an intelligence picture of what's going on, even if it's, £20 or £10, it's worth reporting it.
Thank you for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. We upload new content every day, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out, and we'll see you in the morning.